everybody. We're back again. Three old friends. Music never ends. The usual suspects, Mike and Dave. And this week, got us got to wave to our numerous fans. I hope it's plural. Anyway, getting all that out of this is what, Mike, our 25th or something like that.
I
25th
think
or
this is
26th.
25. Yep.
25. So maybe, this time, we're usually pretty fun loving around here. And I think this will be a lively discussion because I think it always is. But it is one that's about war. And war is not the easiest thing to discuss, Sure. And as we all found out, there are a lot of songs about war and what war means and how it affects us. And I can probably safely say all of us have been affected by it one way or another. We lived in that thing. I don't think we've ever been on the face of the earth where there hasn't been some sort of conflict, whether it be us or in another country. So, and it's kind of strange. And war is both glorified, protested. We still champion it. We support the troops. I'm sure we all do. My brother, why wouldn't I? And everyone out there. My sister, she's in the Air Force. So, yeah. So we try to tackle it as best we could. We don't, we have all due respect to what happens in war. We're not here to make any political statement. I'm sure I don't want to speak to, if they want to, they can. I'm not going to ever stop anyone from speaking their mind. That's why they fight these wars for us, So say whatever you want, but we're not here to change people's minds about anything or get into it. Sure, is war bad? Of course it is, and so because the end result is usually something. And as we all discovered in these songs, not that you need songs to discover these things, but war is on a lot of different levels, and it affects a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. And so, as we'll get right into it, and let me first ask if any of y'all want to, add anything to the introduction.
The only thing I would say is we talked a little bit about this, like about what types of songs and things we'd do. And, I think just to lay the foundation, I would say that almost all of the songs that we have on the playlist, and really when you're talking about war, yeah, some of it's supporting the troops or it's, those kind of things. But there's always always seems to be a little tinge of protest in almost every song. At one point, we were going to just do war songs and then maybe do protest songs, but the reality is they mesh together so much, and the messages and the meanings and the way they're presented, just by the nature of it, have that tinge of protest or we fought, but I don't really agree, or I don't know why we did this, So anyways, just thought to lay that out there that was kind of a natural thing with a lot of the songs.
Right. Yeah, I'll just add one point then. I think some people see it as really contradictory, maybe even hypocritical for somebody to say they support the troops, yet have trouble with the way a war is conducted, just the cost of war, the politics behind it, whatever. And I don't see it that way. I think you can have more than one thing in your head. And some of these songs, they really show, they lay bare what happens in war as much as a song can. So anyway.
Okay. No, both salient points, great points. And like you said, as we progress, you'll learn, why these songs are meaningful. So anyway, we usually I started out, I was number one here, and I started with There Is a War, which is by Leonard Cohen, which is kind of a little different because it isn't really a song about war. And in fact, doing a little research is more done about men and women and their struggle. But that's the kind of war that we deal with. Now, it's a satirical look. He's like, hey, let's go to the war. Does it miss us? So he's also making some points there. Do you want to get hurt? Stuff like that. A lot of good saying points. But I wanted to open the playlist, kind of just opening it up with that to kind of show that there's a variety of wars that people deal with it, in everyday life. So, what y'all think?
I'm a big Leonard Cohen fan. He was an interesting fella. This song, I agree. It's not about literal battle per se, but it is exactly like you said. It's all, between black and white, between rich and poor, men and women. The divide. It's about the divide, which I think is really pertinent right now, in this country, other places too. But it's almost like we have an internal Cold War right now, and it's yeah. That was the main thing it made me think about. And just one little side point. Okay, very brief. I started to make the YouTube song playlist, for the last video, and I've been very tired lately, and I started making this one instead. And that song he did at Austin City Limits. I saw him the same tour at this old place called the Backyard here in Austin, but he did that song at Austin City Limits, and Ann Richards, former governor, was in the audience, and she was getting into that song. She was laughing and tapping her foot. And anyway, it's a good song.
Yeah, I think it was a great start, and it's not always about war. There's a lot of battles that are being fought in homes all the time, and this was written in 1974, but he's talking about the battle between men and women, and specifically he highlights in his own marriage. I mean, he really says, I'm going to read a couple of the lyrics because it really jumps out. He says, "Well, I live here with a woman and a child. The situation makes me kind of nervous. Yes, I rise up from her arms," she says. "I guess you call this love. I call it service." And then he goes on later to talk about how, just things have gotten worse and worse in the marriage. But he says, come on, why don't you just come back to the war? And when he says come back to the war, it means come back to it's better than nothing. I'd rather fight and be in this than be without you, which is kind of interesting. So anyway, again, the lyrics on this, if you get a chance to check them out, are just brilliant. I won't read all of them or go into all of them, but even this one, and even through the playlist, this isn't one that you just listen to and go, "Oh, that's a great song. It's got a great beat," and you just pass off on the lyrics. No, all these songs you've got to delve in and listen and see what they're saying about what the lyrics are about. So anyway, I thought it was a great start. It was a great tune. I wasn't familiar with it, but like Mike said, I like Leonard Cohen, and just haven't delved into a lot of his music.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic song, and I think I said this when we were making this. I'm channeling my inner Mike now. You guys are such influences. Like, I'm sure a year ago I would never have thought, oh, I'm going to go look for a Leonard Cohen song, to start this. But I thought, what a perfect start, and to be exposed to it beforehand, and then, oh yeah, I'll take a chance on Leonard Cohen. I've heard some stuff. Mike's introduced us to some stuff. I wasn't a big fan, so I'm sure a year ago I wouldn't have been picking Leonard Cohen. Trust me. So anyway, and then this is going to the next one. I think Mike hit it out of the park. This one, and I'll say kind of early, this was one of my early favorites. Just a great song. Richard Thompson, who had the great song the last time. Dad's Gonna Kill Me. I mean, man, when you hear it, man, it really hits home. So, Mike.
And Mike, yeah. Where'd you pull this one from?
Well, I knew it. I love Richard Thompson, and the last one I put on was Bees Wing, which is acoustic. He's such a great guitar player. I've been wanting to put on something electric because it really shows there too. And this one just fit right in. But he put it out a few years ago, and it's just one it's just a hard hitting song. It's about Iraq, a soldier in Iraq, fearing his days are numbered. There's some really hard imagery in there. It's almost hard to listen to some of the things he describes. And I learned a couple of things. I knew this song, but I was always, what is that? Dad's Gonna Kill Me. What does that mean? I looked it up. It's one of the few things I looked up, and that's short for Baghdad. At least that's the explanation I saw. Another one of what?
No, that's interesting.
And the other one, there were more things in there that are kind of more British sayings, maybe British military, whatever. Another one was muzzle monkeys, and I was like, "What is that? Is he talking about the locals? Is he what? That sounds a little sketchy." It was that was British slang for American soldiers.
Ah.
The British soldiers in Iraq, thinking, take what you can figure out what you want from that, but not necessarily positive term. But yeah, it's I can't imagine, and no song could really capture what it would be like with that fear. We have another couple of songs I think in here that try to do that too, of like being in combat or at any moment you can go over a landmine or somebody can pop up with a gun or whatever or RPG or whatever. So yeah, that's about it. I just love Richard Thompson.
Well, I've said this before. We're all becoming Richard Thompson fans. You just keep putting on these gems. I think it's an early favorite for me too. And the first time I heard it, the first time I listened to it, I thought the same thing. Dad's gonna kill me. I thought he's thinking about his dad or something. And boy, was I wrong. Yeah, it wasn't until I went and looked this one up as well and went, oh, Baghdad, of course. Now the song changes completely. You know, Dad's gonna kill him. Baghdad's gonna kill him. You know, nobody loves me here. Nobody loves me here. And then he describes in detail. You know, you get hit by the booby trap. Your risk increases. You know, you roll the dice, and I got lucky this time. And just every day is a like, am I going to survive this? Dad is going to kill me. Baghdad is going to kill me. Every day he's thinking about that. And then the lyrics in the song and the chorus just keep highlighting that. So when you know that, every time he gets to that, Dad's gonna kill me, then now you're like, oh my gosh, he is just running scared in Baghdad, and from the Iraq War. And just again, I love the tune. He said he wrote it about a troubled soldier that was in Iraq in 2003, and so he had that inspiration to play on the lyric of Baghdad and all that. So he says, I've got a wife, a kid, another on the way. I might get home if I can live through today. Before I came out here, I never used to pray. Nobody loves me here. Nobody loves me here. I mean, he feels just all alone. Just a great lyric on this song. So thanks, Mike. That was awesome.
Yeah, I thought, and I think that Dad's gonna kill me works so well because you don't think about it as Baghdad's gonna kill me until you really get into the song. But
Right.
what does it usually mean to you? I've done something wrong. Dad's gonna kill me. I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing something wrong. Dad's gonna kill me. Which I don't know if that's, he's trying to say that, but I think it effectively worked for me. I'm like, oh yeah, that has to have some sort of other meaning there. You just don't use Dad's and use it as impactful as he did, to convey your message. So anyway, another great song, like I said, Richard Thompson. Who knew? That Mike knew. And then Dave goes a little more traditional with in the band playing Waltzing Matilda, which gets us back into the throes of war. And I don't know if y'all have, obviously, maybe I know Dave. I think I watched the movie Gallipoli together. I know we've all seen the movie or at least know about the movie and just the massacre. And it's emblematic of all the, well, how wars are fought from up until that point. How sometimes it's just massacre and you have to just endure it and then try to live through it and then try to celebrate it. But it's hard to celebrate with what you've lost because of it. But you've also gained something because you're still around. So, man, again, like you said, it's just an emotional roller coaster. These first three songs.
Yeah, I almost want to let you talk about it first, Dave, since it's yours. You want to go ahead and do that?
Either way, I can if you want. I mean, we had talked about the Pogues version of this song, and I had listened to that a couple of times, and then I came across this Liam Clancy version, which it was a little shorter. It gets to the point, and but I feel a little dumb because I learn a lot from not only just playing these songs, but then sometimes researching a little bit. And so I knew the tune, or I knew the band played Waltzing. I knew Waltzing Matilda is a famous song from Australia. I could probably get that on a Jeopardy game show or something, you know. But if you ask me what does it mean, I probably would have said, well, waltzing is like, you know, doing something, and Matilda, I don't know, that's the name of a girl. You might think that it's something about this girl. No, it has nothing to do with that. So to educate our listeners a little bit, and I did not know this, so I feel stupid, but I'm enlightened now. A Matilda is a like a backpack, or like a you know, something you carry, a bundle of possessions. And waltzing was more like, you know, you know, traveling, and to, you know, to be a wanderer, to be um, a roamer, a rover, he says in the song, that kind of thing. That's what it was. And it was an old folk song that became popular back in the turn of the century, early part of the, and I guess Australia latched onto it and went, yeah, we're roving and we're waltzing Matilda and we're bringing, you know, we're on the road kind of thing. And that's what it's about. And then this version of this, and the band played Waltzing Matilda, turns it into a war song of Australia going to war, going to Gallipoli, getting massacred, as Jose said, you know, and enduring and going through that. And in this case, him even, you know, getting his legs blown off, head over ass, you know, arse, and you know, coming back and not really being a hero, but being, you know, just he didn't want to be pitied and everything else, and but he could no longer waltz, and that was what he loved to do. He loved to be a rover and be traveling. And he said, I can't even put up the tents because I don't have legs anymore. And then he talks about the veterans and everybody who keep watching in the parades, and they question, why, what are they marching for, you know? And now if you think about it, you know, that was World War One. So we're talking, when did it end? 1917 or
1918.
1918, right? So we're over just over 100 plus years, right? From that, obviously, then nobody is alive from that. But when he wrote this, or when they're singing about this, probably, I don't know when this was, in the 70s or whatever, there was probably still some veterans maybe alive. But just a cool song that you know, really puts you into the scene there. No, I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but
Nah, you're perfectly fine.
now, yeah,
You're really great insight. Let me just say that.
Yeah, I agree. And I've known this song a long time, but I've never heard this version. I don't know if this is the original of this or who wrote it. I'm kind of curious, but I didn't have time to look it up. So
there was somebody else. I think it was Eric Bogle or something like that came in my, but no.
I was always familiar with the Pogues version, and I had just assumed it was theirs. But as I was picking out songs to go through this playlist, they have 3 songs that I had on possibilities. One of them ended up making it on later. So you kind of helped me with that decision by putting this version on. But yeah, it's a hard song. You've said most of it. It's like he said, there's a line in there, but I didn't think. Oh, and when he woke up in the hospital and saw his legs were gone, he's like, he wished he was dead. He didn't think there were worse things than dying. You know, that's just like, oh, that just gets you. And because I can't imagine. I mean, I couldn't even try to imagine. The other thing that really I was thinking about when I was listening to this, I've heard it so many times. But for some reason, I really was focusing the last time I listened to it today. The part about the contrast of the ship sailing away and everybody, you know, on the pier, all patriotic, their flags and cheering and whatever. And I don't know if I brought this up before, but there's a Mark Twain, I don't know if it's a poem or a short story. It's very short, maybe an essay called The War Prayer. And it's about a time going into war. It was probably 1812, not 1812, Spanish-American War, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But is basically everybody in town. They're marching their young men and their heroes, and they're shooting off fireworks, and it's a huge big celebration. And they're having a thing at church, and this kind of apparition, kind of old ghost looking thing comes in and gets up behind the pulpit and it's like, well, this is really how you feel about war. Well, let me tell you a little bit about war. And then he starts telling these kind of stories, and that's kind of the point of that. It's like hard to, people are waving the flags and stuff, and bless our troops, that's great. We support them, but war is war, and we can't be blind to that. When people are going off, that's going to happen. So, it was a great. I'm glad again. Oh, I just like his. I like his. I guess he's Scottish. I don't know, but that thing in his voice really was. Even though it's about Australians, it was. I thought it added a powerful level to that song.
Yeah, no, two great songs that went together that kind of encompass what's like to be in war and deal. Because I want to say on because I think, and I'll veer here a little. The next three songs were all three songs that I thought we were all in sync for some reason. We all found a song that talked about how other people are affected from the war. We have a traveling soldier. Now, again, if I was channeling Mike earlier, I was channeling Dave. He's introduced us to the Chicks. He's put some songs on. So, and I found that song because of that. I was like, I want to, and it wasn't originally their song, but, it was covered. But man, it's so hard. That's one of those songs. And especially if you've lived in a small town like I have, and you've been to a football game and had to endure talk about the Iraq War, Afghanistan, and they make announcements during these games. Now, not as hardcore as what they do in that song, but and then Dress Blues, Jason Isbell, I've heard of. You hear him sometimes on the jam band scene. He's kind of a peripheral guy there, and that's another one where, man, knowing military people and your Dress Blues and what that means, and then what that means in this song, it hits you. It really does, man. And then, of course, Letters from Home, man. So the I'll let y'all talk about it. I mean, they're just some fantastic songs. So first, Mike, talk about I talked about Traveling Soldier a little, just but talk about Dress Blues.
Yeah, Jason Isbell. I'm still kind of new to his music. He did another song about the band, or a couple like Danko and Manuel or something like that. So I've been wanting to get into his music more, and I had heard this one and it kind of popped up. But I actually was thinking about putting something else here. But when I heard the song about the perspective of this girl, the traveling soldier, this girl in this town who basically just meets this soldier on his way to the war, and they end up kind of communicating long distance, spark a romance, and then he's killed in war. So there's that perspective. But Dress Blues is from the perspective of the guy who was killed in war, and he's being taken, to the funeral, and and it's it takes a minute if you don't know what those things mean to get. What can you see out your window? I can't see nothing from here. He's in the back of the hearse. Flags and scripture on grocery store signs, and you can just go on and on. But it's a really, I like the arrangement too. I mean, as a song itself, I think it's a very well written song. But I just thought those fit well together. Do you want to go ahead and go into the next one, or do you want to talk about it, Dave?
Either way, I mean, I can talk about Letters from Home, and then we can circle back and talk about all of them. I will say that again, I think I agree. All three songs have, you have a little bit of the country tinge to all of those. I'm not sure if Jason Isbell is necessarily country or not, but it had that feeling to it. And the imagery of these songs was just off the charts. If you can't listen to these songs, listen to the lyrics of them and put yourself in that situation or whatever, then you're not listening to the song. Letters from Home, I'm not a huge John Michael Montgomery fan. I've always known about this song. I've always listened to it. It's always been in my playlist. And so when you all played the first two, and I Traveling Soldiers a big uh, favorite of mine. I wasn't familiar with Dress Blues, but just the letters from home makes you realize that even if it's not a war or a conflict going on right at that moment, everyday life for the soldiers is hard. They're missing their families. They're having to go do stuff, and when you get that letter from home, he said, like he says, I fold it up and put it in my shirt, pick up my gun and get back to work. And it keeps me driving on. And that's just so powerful. He talks about his family back home, and even his dad, who doesn't say a lot, but he's really proud of him, and that kind of thing, I'm sure, inspires the troops and the men and women who fight that are out there on the front lines all the time. And so, yeah, that's Letters from Home. Well, we can circle back and talk about the other one.
Yeah, let me just say with Letters from Home, like I said before, I had a brother who was in Afghanistan for a year, and it's not the same. It's not you write a letter anymore. Usually you send correspondence or email or something like that. But we did send some care packages and stuff, and it makes a difference. It really does. Uh, we don't think about that. It's a whole lot different nowadays with cell phones and stuff like that. But still, it's those small things. And then to have the message behind it, of a dad saying, he's proud of his son. It's tough. And they like to joke about it. They like to, oh yeah, your dad loves you. He's proud of you. But deep down, they all know, yeah, that means something. So yeah, and yeah, Dave, you want to talk about Dress Blues or
Well, that Mike, if Mike, do you want to talk about Letters from
right?
Home? And I'll talk.
Sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. However it works out. Yeah. So I'll confess, all these songs, you know, bring up emotions. I'll speak for myself, but this one, I think after we made it the first time we were, I listened to it and got to that song. I was just like, I teared up. I mean, especially the part about the dad. I'm proud of you. Even now, I'm just kind of like, yeah, it's like, you know, well written song. I don't know anything about um, the songwriter performer, but it kind of all the stuff kind of just starts adding upon itself. And there's so much emotion here, and not that the other songs didn't have that. I did that for others as well, but that one just was the first one that just kind of hit me for some reason. It's a great song, and yeah, it's in this narrator, he doesn't die at the end of the song or in the song, but it's still just as powerful. You know, being away from your family, your wife is pregnant. And I think she was. I
Right.
don't remember. Anyway,
Oh,
yeah. So I like the song a lot.
Yeah, and there's similarities between the songs too, between Dress Blues and Letters from Home. I like the lyric where he says, um, your wife said this would all be funny when you got back home in a week. You'd turn 22 and would celebrate in a bar or a tent by the creek. Your baby would just about be here, and your very last tour would be up, but you won't be back. They're all dressing in black, drinking sweet tea in a styrofoam cups. It's like, man, he's probably so close to coming home, and then tragically died, and now he's in his Dress Blues.
right.
And I guess this was actually written. I'll just say the name. It said it was based on Marine Corporal Matthew Connolly, who served in Iraq and died in February of 2006.
Wow.
So I want
I don't know that.
because I looked that up, and so we can't forget. We can't forget the names and the people. I mean, just yesterday was 9/11, and I know at my work, I work for Space Force. We had little ceremonies to remember, and on the screens in the building, they were showing the list of names of the people who had died in 9/11. Um, we just can never forget the names and the faces of the people who sacrificed all.
That's for damn sure. So, It doesn't get any easier, guys, as we go and delve into this playlist. And because next I went with Bruce Springsteen, and as some of you might know, I'm not the biggest Bruce Springsteen fan, but I kind of chide and I've made fun of some of his songs. I can't do that with this one. Devils and and when I was looking for a song to play, I thought again, because of y'all's influence, I'm looking at different people. And, I thought to myself, I'm sure, well, Bruce Springsteen obviously has Born in the USA, which is one of those. But I found this song, and man, didn't know how really impactful it was. It's a great song. Talks about a guy, in Iraq, fighting, wondering why he's doing this. Is this important? Why? What am I sacrificing here, both personally, and mentally? And so, just a great song. And I will say, Mike, thank you for making me, after that ridicule of Bruce Springsteen the last time, you know, like I said, he's obviously a great musician, and he really can convey a message, and especially that the haunting of the song and how he sings it. And we'll get into this a little for the next song, but I thought when we get into the When God on Our Side by Bob Dylan, two songs, we always talk about that transition. And at one point I was walking, I thought there was going to be another verse of Devils and Dust when it went from one to the other. So yeah, what'd you think, Mike?
I have to thank you because I'd heard the name of this. I guess it's the name of a record too, that it came off of. But I don't think I'd heard it. And I looked up the lyrics on this one to get a better idea. And, this is imagery, his buddy there. And, I guess it sounds like he was killed and he's dreaming about him, and, just the horrors of war that he's dreaming about. There's a line. I'll go ahead, if you don't mind, go on to my next one, because I picked the next one because of a line in here which is about God on our side, on my side, or whatever. And there's a Dylan song, I'll admit, a long one, but God on Our Side. I think Joan Baez did it and others, but it's just basically every verse of that song is, we went through this war, but we had God on our side. We always had that kind of, and he kind of, something that's always interested me and kind of bothered me, and this is one of the reasons I like the song. Liking a song, I don't know if that's the best word. I've been intrigued by this song, and it's that, I watched a documentary the other day about the Civil War. Both sides had chaplains. They both thought their cause was just, and they both prayed to God, to help them. It reminds me also of the line, the scene in Patton where he goes to the father and says, "Can you give the boys a prayer for victory?" And the father's like, "Yeah, okay," or the chaplain or whatever. But that's always kind of been something that I've struggled with. God on our side. I understand I get the idea of a just war, or at least as close as you can get to it, like stopping the Holocaust and the horrors of Nazi Germany, and frankly the Japanese, things like that. But there's so many wars that it's hard to see that. But for the soldiers out there, they need God, or they need their higher power, whatever. They need that comfort and that to believe in. So it's just, I just put it out there. It is a challenging story, and I hope it doesn't, push any buttons. Yeah, that's all I can say about that.
Well, those two songs, Devils and Dust, and then With God on Our Side, I don't know if you guys are just music savants, or if you're channeling each other, or I know, Mike, you probably went, "Hey, that line in the Bruce Springsteen, it could go real well with the Dylan song." You probably thought that, but you probably didn't delve deep enough. I mean, at first he says, "I got God on my side, I'm just trying to survive." And then the next verse he says, we've got God on our side. We're just trying to survive. And I don't think Jose probably consciously did this either, but I think this is a bridge song to some of the songs that were already put on. There's a War by Cohen, because he goes in and says, Bruce Springsteen says, now every woman and every man, they want to take a righteous stand, find the love that God wills and the faith that he commands. I've got my finger on the trigger. And tonight, faith just ain't enough. When I look inside my heart, there's just devils and dust. So he's not just talking about war and that thing. He brings the love aspect of it. So you got there's a War by Cohen, and then even later on we're gonna hear the Neil Young song Love and War. So I don't know if you were just doing this or what, but this song channels both the love part of it as well as the war aspect of it, and then goes right into With God on Our Side and the Dylan stuff that he talks about. Now, the other thing I'd say on this is, how could you go wrong when Bruce Springsteen has a harmonica solo halfway through the song, and you're listening, you're going, gosh, that sounds so good. That's great. And then not only does he do it then, but he comes back at the end of the song and brings the harmonica back in again. And you two brilliant playlist developers, it then goes right into Dylan's harmonica at the beginning of With God on Our Side. And I'm just blown away by the combination of those two songs. Anyway, and then just talk about, we can stop there. I could talk about With God on Our Side if we want, but the combination of those two, brilliant.
Right, like I said, I thought I was gonna hear another verse at some point. I was gonna hear another verse, and I was like, oh wait, no, that's not what happened. That's the other song. So, and like Mike said, and Dave, there's a connection with Love and War where that same he prays for Allah. We'll get into it. Prays for Allah. He plays. That's also mentioned there as well, and it's a running theme throughout all these about God. So none of us have ever been in combat. Never knows how we're gonna react about. Let's say the old saying is right. There's no atheists in foxholes, because you just know, right? Hey, sometimes you've got to believe. You've got to believe, and God bless you if you do. No pun intended. So, and let's face yeah, it's so yeah, but and let's face it, sometimes God's name is used to fight wars. So, right, it really cuts both ways at times. People use God's name, their religion, to start wars. We're experiencing that right now. So we'll move on from that. And
well, hey, let me say one thing. So, Mike, for context, the Dylan song was what, like 1964, I think. So, where are we in terms of the Vietnam War? Yeah, it had started, but it hadn't gotten as
no,
big as it was. And he goes through and counts each war, right? He says a little bit. Each verse is a different war, and then he puts a little stamp on each one, and like, hey, was God on our side there when we're counting the bodies, and and what about Germany? When we forgave them, but now God's on their side, and I liked how that went, and then but then at the very end, he said that if God's on our side, he'll stop the next war. Well, this is in 64. So he's probably looking pretty far in with the Vietnam War that went on through the early to mid 70s.
Yeah. 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 Well, good point.
okay, yeah, no. So now we get to the portion of our tape, which you get to a little sneak peek behind the curtain as to how we make this. When we first started making this, and Dave, if you want to explain the story, you can. I'll let you. I'll let you explain what happened here, and we can talk. We can discuss it.
Well, the next song was a song called Sam Stone by John Prine from 1971. And again, I don't know a lot of John Prine. I came across this song. I wasn't real familiar with it. And I put it on, and when I first put it on, I thought, man, I don't know if I could go there and talk about how deep this is, because it's about a guy coming back from Vietnam and being not only not just PTSD, which is bad enough, but that he was addicted to drugs and that he used the drugs to cope and to get back into life and just put all the money into daddy's arm and eventually died even and killed himself with the drugs. And it was just so heavy that I wasn't sure if we should talk about it. So after we put it on the playlist, I asked Mike and Jose if I could switch to a different song, and maybe put on a song called El Salvador by Peter, Paul and Mary, which again is still talking about the brutality going on in El Salvador, but nothing like the depth of the Sam Stone song. And I think right before the playlist or we did this, we talked about it, and I felt like it is what happens, and it is something that occurs. So I think we shouldn't dodge the issue, and we should just hit it head on and talk about it. It's a tragic song, but that happens to many of the returning veterans, not just from Vietnam, but our other wars that we've fought since. And it's not always drug addictions, but it's other things as well that keeps the warriors wounded.
No, I'm glad you made that decision. I thought both songs were good again, and both were great songs, and they fit in either way. And I'm glad, and it, like you said, there are two different songs. I'm glad we put a little John Prine on. I know I have a lot of friends who love John Prine. He recently passed away a couple of years ago, but but it was good to hear that song. Now, full disclosure, when you released it, I took it off. I'm like, we have enough heavy songs. It's hard enough getting through this playlist and having then another one, which again, like you said, Dave, you have to face that. It's a fallout of war, and that's what I think the playlist is trying to say, so to speak. And so I went to El Salvador, and I'm glad we have this one on because this isn't a war. El Salvador has been such war ravaged for years. It's been a part of our lives for years of El Salvador and all its conflicts and our government getting involved and why we got involved and all all those other issues. And in the end, it's really who suffers, the people there, the country as a whole. So no, I hope people both enjoy both songs and
so we agree we're just going to leave both on. We're going to break the rule, and I didn't mean to do that. But they're both great, and
I think we should break the rule because they're both great. Sometimes you just got to. Mike, what do you think? First, talk about the songs, Mike.
Well, I'll go backwards. Since I knew Sam Stone, the song, and I'll get to that in a second. El Salvador, I mentioned this before we got on here, is it kind of reels you in thinking it's they're talking about south of the border and the sunny whatever, and it's kind of this almost Jimmy Buffett like kind of thing going, but just a few lines in, this is not, it's what El Salvador I guess could be, at least the tourists, but it's soon becomes about the horror down there. I was prepared to talk a lot about America's involvement in other countries' wars, but I think I'll let that go. That's kind of where that song goes. The Sam Stone, I think it's really important to have this one on here, even though it's a real hard one to listen to. I don't see myself just sticking it on the music sometime, just walking around the house. It's a serious song. It's a great song. And this one completely deals with, the aftermath. Waltzing Matilda, it goes into that, but this is just like, this is what his life was. This basically most of the whole song. And PTSD is a horrible thing. It's not just from war. People can go through terrible, violent situations, but so many of our people in armed forces have gone through that, and especially when people, what they used to call it shell shock, things like that. It's like there wasn't really, that was kind of brushed aside, you know, people didn't really do anything for that for so many years. And so you had veterans living on the streets, you know, people had basically went insane and nobody doing anything for them. And yes, drugs and all that. I mean, I could tell you a couple times when I used to be a newspaper reporter on the police beat, there were things that happened involving people that were veterans that had PTSD, and it's just it's something that we need to keep in mind every time a soldier comes home from something like that. So it's a hard song actually today. So I've listened to this a number of times. I was listening to it coming back from work. I work downtown today. And I think I got to that song, like I just turned it off. It's like, I've heard enough for now. I gotta have a break from this. This is just so hard. But I'm kind of going to the big picture. It's a great playlist. And this song is no less than any other.
So your vote is to keep both.
Oh yes. I didn't answer that question, did I? Yes. So I'm
Good.
on board with that.
We'll break the rules once, I'm sure. I'm sure this will be the only time we break the rule.
Yeah. We sort of broke the rules with another song coming up, but I'll get into that in a minute. My song.
Right. Here's I guess I went with Spanish Bombs for the next song by The Clash, and this could be probably one of the more personal songs for me, only in the fact that my grandfather fought in the Spanish Civil War. I know it sounds crazy, and was on a fascist, was on the winning side. Obviously, he was Franco. I wouldn't be here probably if he wasn't on the winning side. Let's just put it that way. And Franco was a ruthless dictator. There's just no doubt about it. I mean, you just can't mask that. At the same time, my mom lived under that regime, and because they were on the winning side, they were afforded a little more leeway and championed Franco's cause for whatever you want to take from that, as people do with certain dictators. They went along with it. So this is part of my life. This is part of my family. It's weird to say that, you know, it's weird to say my grandfather was a fascist. Whether he killed actual people, I don't never discussed. He was a lot older. No one ever talked about the war, like, you know, as probably should, or he didn't. It was never discussed. You know, stories about him being a veterinarian in the war, being a cook, being a general's assistant. We heard those. But I have to know, as anyone who goes to war and picks up arms, he probably had to fight. Just gonna throw that out there. So this song, having said all that, that's one of the reasons I've chosen the song Spanish Bombs. Obviously, The Clash is one of my favorite groups anyway. And this is more of a strummers talking about using the Spanish Civil War, but more talking about the present back in Spain. It still was a divided type country with actual terrorists. Even when we would visit, my mom would talk about, like, oh, the BAS, the ETA, they would bomb certain places in Spain, and you had to be aware of that. And I would sometimes wear a beret, and she says, don't wear a beret because those are the terrorists. That's what they wear. So don't wear that in Spain, which is what, you know, you just think, wow. So just throwing that out there. I didn't want to get too heavy on that. And it's a great song. So, what do you think, Dave?
You know, I like the song. I wasn't familiar with it. It's just it's a good thing. I have to admit my history is not that great of all the things that occurred in the Spanish Civil War, so I can't say that I know everything about it and all that. But again, I think it's just I don't have a lot to say about it. It was a good song. It was a good choice. And it went well right where it came into the playlist. You know, we kind of, if we went with El Salvador, then this went real good right after that because it had that same kind of Spanish feel to it. And then a few songs later, when we start talking about Lives in the Balance, it kind of blended in with that too. So good choice.
Yeah, I was familiar with this song because it's off of I guess I could call it, yeah, London Calling, probably my favorite Clash song, album, excuse me, and song. But this song, yeah, I knew a little bit, you know, a little bit about the Spanish Civil War, and the kind of a prelude to World War II. But I had another song I was going to put on. Well, first off, um, I appreciate you sharing that, Jose. That's real good information for you to kind of be put out there about yourself and your family. That I appreciate you sharing.
It's a weird thing, It's just a weird thing that most of y'all Americans grew up as Americans. Yeah, you don't think twice about that. You're Americans, you do that, and but to have a big different background than everybody else, I think Dave, didn't your dad fought in World War II?
Yeah, my dad fought in
Right.
World War
And
II.
so that was usually the thing. Yeah. You had fathers that fought in World War II, and, so it's just a little different feel.
The yeah, and I had another, my second possible Pogue song was called Lorca's Novena, and it's about I'm gonna say, is it Gabriel, not Garcia, Lorca. Anyway, a Spanish poet, Lorca, Federico Garcia,
Right.
whatever. Anyway,
Federico Garcia Lorca.
yeah. So he was that song is basically about a massacre that happened to the other side in that war, and one of the victims was Lorca, who was a poet, a Spanish poet, and I guess Andalusia is the name of the region. I think Salvador Dali was from there. I may be wrong, but anyway, that was that I was going to include that, but I decided for a different Pogue song, which we'll talk about in a second. So that's all. Anyway, let's see.
There you go, my mom. Right on cue.
Got the Spanish side of the family with your mom, and then you got the Puerto Rican side. How you put a song about Puerto Rico on a previous playlist. So
right, you got to be proud of your heritage, whatever it may be, and and I know y'all are just as well as I am. So sorry for the interruption, a little technical difficulties. Don't know what was going on. Anyway, let's move on to Brothers in Arms. Mike, your song. Interesting enough, this had made another tape in the old days. I was actually listening to one of the old playlists about a week ago, and this song came on. I'm like, oh, what a great song! And then you picked it to put it on here. Just such a fantastic, haunting, another one of those kind of haunting songs. People come together during war, and how that affects you as well, as you have to deal with stuff, together in a war, and how that brings people together. So, Mike, talk about it.
Yeah, Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits off the album Brothers in Arms. I've always loved that song. It's been used in movies and such too, but when I was talking about stretching the rules or whatever, breaking a rule, I forgot I used that on a previous playlist, and I shouldn't have, because it's one that we kind of transcribed into one of these, but I just forgot.
And it was 40 years ago.
You can reuse it again, okay? As long
right.
No one's old, no rule breaking.
all right. But yeah, the song, it's a pretty hard song. He wrote it during Falkland War, so I don't know if he's ever really explained what it was about. Maybe he has, and I just haven't looked it up. But one thing I take from it, it's about the camaraderie, of course, and out on the battlefield. But at the end, there's some lines that make it sound like everyone else is going home but him. He's like, "You're going to leave me now, my brothers in arms." And so I think in the song he's died and being left, buried near the battlefield, or he was never found, or whatever. That's just my interpretation, but it's there's not more to you listen to the song. There's not more I can say about it than that.
Well, and we all tend to the mid '80s. It was our go-to. I mean, we were coming out of high school into college around that time, and so all the music that we were big into music in that time frame, and so when you put this on, it was like, yeah, that was like what, 1985, and I'm sure even back then, I mean, the term "brothers in arms" might have been used before that, but it was popularized by the song as well. Band of Brothers, things like that. But um, again, I've always loved the song, and then after that, I put Lives in the Balance by Jackson Browne, which
Another
was
rule
right this
breaker. That's a
same
rule
thing.
breaker.
I've used it before, but we never used these two together
No.
like we did in a mid-'80s fashion, both talking about conflict and war. So I thought it was good, Mike. I feel I'm right in step with you, and I thought they went real well together as well.
Oh yeah. And let's get to Lives in the Balance, which I've said it before. This is one of my 5 favorite, if not top 3 favorite Jackson Browne songs. In fact, I remember, these are things you remember, telling Dave, talking about how into music we were back then. I remember when Dave bought this album and we took it home and we were just like, man, that is good. And it was so good that on one of the tapes, we put this song and then the song after it, which are 2 fantastic songs. Uh, Shape of the Heart, Lives in the Balance, Shape of the Heart. So when I used to listen to this tape all the time, that's how I know it. Lives in the Balance, Shape of a Heart. And I'll just say Lives in the Balance, not only is it a great, fantastic song musically, but the lyrics are still hold up today, always will, I think, as long as we have conflicts, as long as we have war. And Jackson Browne really nails it. And, I could be talking all night about this song and how all the different instruments that are used, how different it is. Oh, just all aspects of it really, really hit home. Dave, you remember the song?
Well, I want to say one thing about it. It was the lyrics are just a phenomenal, but it really starts challenging. Like, how much do we know? What do we know what the government's doing? Do we really know? They had the arms for hostages deals that were going on, and you had the conflicts in Nicaragua. You had all these different things going on. We're like, well, who's the government backing? Why are they backing them? Why are they training those people? And it was just a confusing time. And the lyrics really kind of says, there's a shadow on the faces of the men who fan the flames of the wars that are fought in places we can't even say their names. So there's a lot of underlying protests to the song, um, and who doesn't love a pan flute in the middle of the song? Um, because not I mean, I'd have to look at the credits and see who did it or whatever. But back then, there was a commercial always on the TV back then about this guy named Zamfir and the magic of the pan flute. And I just remember that commercial being drilled into my head. You can order now for $9.99. You too can have the music of Zamfir. But that's what the instrument was. It was a pan flute that Jackson Browne used, and it was just beautiful.
Yeah, we don't have enough pan flutes on these songs or penny whistles. Got to play more Irish music for those. The this song, well, first off, I remember it from the radio because I listened to a lot of album-oriented rock stations back in the day, and so they played a lot of Jackson Browne. And this is one I remember hearing quite a bit, which was a newer one back in those days because everything else they played was from like Running on Empty and that older stuff. So it was it definitely brings back some memories. And just the other, you kind of touched on that. Well, you didn't just touch on it, Dave, but this does go back to the song El Salvador, some of the same themes they're talking about there. And I won't belabor the point, but there's more than just a couple of wars where we've sent advisors or we've been more, the CIA has been more involved behind the scenes and stuff. And it's a troubling thing. It does raise questions. What do we know? And, what is how how do we feel about that? I'm trying to think the right words. So
I think sometimes the government, I mean, I think back, and I don't think I was like in 82 or 83 or whenever these things were going on in the mid 80s. I was not aware of really what was going on. I mean, maybe on the peripheral, but I wasn't delving into, the politics of it and why are we doing this and why are we doing that. And it seems to me that we take a side, we think we have the right side, and then sometimes history comes out later and you kind of realize, whoa, that was kind of a mistake. The government turned. Then they flipped and became even more brutal. And we didn't know it at the time. And I'm not making excuses, but sometimes we just don't know. And even with El Salvador, I don't know a lot about it, but when I was researching this, just the last couple of years, they've gone through a lot of stuff in El Salvador where they went the new government that it was just elected in, and you could say elected in, but they were elected in, and then they owned so much of the majority that they essentially changed the laws and said, no, now we can run again or another term. There's the right wing portion of El Salvador, and they went and did a war on gangs and on drugs and rounded up 70,000 people and put them in jails, this large mass incarceration. And part of the blowback is, you know, you probably got some innocent people in there. You probably made some mistakes along the way, but that's what they're doing. That's what they're dealing with now. And the leftist government, part of that has kind of lost control, and the right has taken over, and they own the votes, they can control everything, and that's maybe not a good thing either. Anyway.
No, it's well, all we need to look at is Chile in '73, the Shah of Iran, and it's all documented.
Yeah.
Like my Dave said, how do we identify with that? How do we deal with that? It's our government. We're Americans, but yes, man, it's very manipulated. It's just, obviously, and songs like Jackson Browne's opens your eyes to it. They make sure that, hey, keep in check. You don't get those as much anymore. Let's just say that. But I'm not. I shouldn't say that. There's always going to be protest songs, and always going to be make sure. Check it out, double check. So anyway, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to add one last little point. A lot of these wars that you're talking about in Central America, Vietnam, all of them were about the Cold War. I mean, fear of a left-leaning government in Chile. So we support the right-wing guy, Pinochet, who ends up deciding to kill as many people as he wants. They disappear. So that's our legacy. Yeah, we can't deny it, but it doesn't have to be the end of the story. There's a lot more things.
Even our government has to be accountable at some point, or what we believe is going to happen. But as like he says in the song as well, and as Dave pointed out in the lyric, they work in the shadows. They work behind it. We can't be. We're oblivious to things that are happening in the that they're doing it, and whether that's for national security, if that's how you want to look at it, I'm sure that's how it's justified or portrayed, and whether that is true, because what can you say? It's unfortunate or fortunate that you need like that in modern world. Now it's more cyber now, but let's face it, there's a whole world out there that we don't even know that's going on. And so whether it comes to fruition, it comes through history, we learn about it, you have to identify it, you have to own it, let's face it, most of the time. But it happens. It just happens. It's been a part of our world, it's been a part of thousands of years of the government working in the best interest of the people without them knowing. So, okay, enough heavy of that stuff, because it gets even heavier with Love and War with Neil Young, which of course kind of goes into that thread of these love and war. What is love and war? Love and war, I think I wrote down, one of the few. When I sing about love and war, I don't know really what I'm saying. And I think he was talking to, and a reporter asked him a question once. It was like, what do you mean by that? And he's like, well, I really don't know. You have love and you have war, but can you truly understand either one? And the fine line between it, and why we do it. More so war, and he talks more so war about in the song. So I thought it was an interesting song, and really heartfelt, and him trying to answer questions that can't be answered. So, Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, I liked the song. I wasn't familiar with it either, but yeah, the lyrics of it are really good. You know, talks about young men going off to war, and then young brides waiting, and then not there, or why daddy won't ever come home again. It's there's some contradiction there in the lyrics, but he says I sang in anger, hit another bad chord, but I still try to sing about love and war. You know, so he's like at least getting it out there. He goes, I may not know about it, but I'm going to continue to sing about it for awareness and for everything else. And so I thought that was a good message. And he also talks about how mostly people pray, but they're not really praying to Allah. They're not praying to the Lord. They're mostly praying about love and war.
Yeah, I have to give props to Jose for continuing to turn me on to Neil Young that I don't know. I mean, I thought I was like I knew everything, but there's so many newer songs that you put on a few now, but that I did not know, and or at least the versions of them that you put on. And this I have to Les Noise is the name of the record. I had the CD. I had the CD. Listened to a couple of songs. It's just like he turns the like think of the um, out of the blue into the black. The electric version of that is distorted and you know angst-ridden as that guitar is. He turns it up to 11 on Les Noise on some songs. And so I listened to a couple of songs. Yeah, okay, I'll come back to it. And I don't think I ever did. So I probably didn't make it to that song, which is a real shame. You know, I have a few albums that I have like that I need to go back and revisit that I've learned from doing this. And it's a good song. He on the love side, you kind of I think it was some of the lyrics you were talking about, striking a bad chord, uh, talking about somebody he broke somebody's heart, or how did I forget how the words like the saddest thing I forget the words, but it's like the most whatever he it sounds like autobiographical about a woman in his life. And I don't remember when this album came out because there've been a number for him, but it was really kind of it was interesting, and I wonder if that's really about a person or you know a creative license or what. So good song.
Well, I thought I read somewhere where that lyric where he's hit a chord, then he says it again, and he hit a second chord, and we all know that Neil Young can. And I think someone asked him, or it was written that, well, what does that mean? And he never really was definitive. But you know, like let's face it, Neil Young's had his controversies and has sung about stuff that, and you know, even as back, you know, as singing Southern Man and having to, you know, so or singing about when Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young did that the one tour, and of course talked or truly anti-war and impeached the president, and they got some booze and stuff like that. So you never know, you know, was it one of those events that he struck a bad chord? But no, he's still right going for it. So and let's face it, Mike, it's hard to keep up with Neil Young. Dude puts
Yeah.
out like a crap ton of stuff. I mean, it's just a massive. And as a bonus, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, 1969 will be coming out soon. So you know they're going to release that live version. So thank God. Anyway, uh, and then we move on to a pair of brown eyes, one of our familiar by the Pogues. Mike, just these are one of those songs about war that the little things that you notice in all the horrific things that are going on sometimes, and what you see, what reminds you of it, what reminds you of the devastation of war, what the smaller things. You know, it's not just the overall war and all the gore and stuff that happens in A Pair of Brown Eyes. And this is one of those hard hitting songs. You know, talk about that, Mike.
Yeah, so this was the folk song I did get to, and I've been meaning to do it for a while. I think it's considered um, by a lot of their fans is probably their most favorite song, one of their better crafted songs. I had a friend of mine who I used to work with at the paper, and he said, I think I may misquote him if he watches this, but he said something along the lines of, "That's one of the best opening lines in any song." And now I'm going to forget. Let's see. One evening, drunk to hell, I sat there nearly lifeless. That's not exactly right, but yeah. So it's about a guy, a younger guy, going into a bar and drink, as Shane MacGowan probably did every night. And there's this old veteran, and he tells him a story, and it's this horror of, of what he saw in war. And he saw his buddy, I guess, his brown eyes, but when they came back off the boat, those brown eyes weren't there. And so the reaction that the character, the narrator, has is it makes him mad. It makes him mad to have to hear that story. And he's, at this point he's wasted. I guess you could say it was killing his buzz, whatever. But he was not. But as he goes home, it starts occurring to him that, like, this guy has a story. We all have somebody we've lost. I have my own pair of brown eyes that I miss, and so he could relate to it that way. But I thought it was really interesting because it's like there's people out there that, they have these stories. As long as there's war, there's going to be people, and they maybe don't have anybody to share it with. And so it's a little glimpse into that. So, yeah, it's a hard song, but I love it.
I thought it was a great bookend to, the Liam Clancy and the band played Waltz and Matilda, and then we came back with this towards the end with that same whatever it is, Scottish, Irish brogue kind of song. Starting to become a big Pogues fan as well. Yeah, this is like staring into the eyes of your enemy, right? He talks about bodies piling up, and then he sees the brown eyes, but then he goes back and he says, I looked at him, he looked at me, all I could do was hate him. So I mean, he's talking about that, how powerful that is. And then the connection back to the Liam Clancy and the Waltz and Matilda, he goes into that a roving, I'll go, which is the same kind of thing as we talked about at the beginning of Waltz and Matilda. It's that, yeah, I'm going to go across the countryside and be roving and doing all that, but he's still going to look for those pair of brown eyes, right? So anyway, I thought it was a cool song, a good way to bring it towards the end of the playlist. So thanks for that. And then you're gonna transition to this. So I actually want to talk about the last song, last though.
Oh, last. Okay.
Because I kind of really want to know what you all think of the song before I say anything on the last song. The last song being Jimmy Newman by but did you talk about Pair of Brown Eyes already, Jose? Did you need?
Yeah, I gave it. It's like I said, I find it interesting that it's a Pair of Brown Eyes, that this is his focal point. Nothing about the persona, the person, but what sticks out, this pair of brown eyes and what that means. It's just someone's eyes. Everyone has eyes, but it's that pair of brown eyes. So anyway, yeah. But yeah, speaking of eyes that might not open, wake up. Jimmy Newman, John Denver. It's hard. When you listen to it, you have to really listen to this. Okay, what's happening here? What's going on? And he's, wake up, Jimmy Newman, wake up. You might not wake up, and so it starts out that way, right? Is it wake up? Is he dead? Is he sleeping? You're gonna miss the fight. You're not gonna wake up. It's I'll let you talk about it, but it's a hard song to listen to because yeah, it hurt, might not wake up. Wake up, Jimmy Newman, wake up. Mike?
Yeah, ditto. No, it is. And it does start out, can't really tell. He doesn't have the pain in his voice at the beginning. Like, hey, breakfast is on. Wake up. Let's go look at the nurse's butt. Rear is the word he used. But you start seeing hear the more anxiousness in his voice. Then yeah, toward the end, he's just like, it's hit home. He gets it. I don't go too. I think I'm kind of that a lot, but I was really surprised. I feel like I know a lot of John Denver's music. This sounds like really young John Denver, but this this is not really, I don't know everything. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I don't know, but this is not really, doesn't jive with that. You know, it's like such a different type of song. And it is hard to listen to, and we end on that exclamation point. That is the end of the thing. And I don't think we need a soft ending to this. So I'm on board with it.
Yeah, it's not Thank God I'm a Country Boy or Country Roads or Rocky Mountain High. It's not. It's got an edge to it. And I came across this song probably I don't know, probably a couple of years ago, and then kind of put it away. Didn't really think about it until we came up with the war theme, and then I remembered it. But yeah, just the way the song builds. It's a short song, but it builds. Hey, we're getting up. We're going to go to the. Look, there's a line forming, and we're get to go home, Jimmy. And just the way the imagery of how he does it. I can imagine this happening to soldiers who are wounded and that are over there, and they get a bond, not only because they were in the trenches or they were in their same platoon or they were with them, but when they get to the hospital and they're sitting there laying there all day, right, for probably weeks and months trying to recover, and their bedside person next to them is, when they talk about stuff and they laugh and they keep each other going, so that they can get to that point where, hey, eventually we're going to get to go home. And then the way that the story describes is that, he just, it builds and builds and builds. And he's like, come on, it's just, a joke's a joke, but come on, I'd go slap you if I wasn't so weak. And I told him, you sleep hard, Jimmy, come on, just open your eyes, just get up. This is our moment. The folks don't even know we're coming home, and we're gonna surprise them. And then he gets and just so emotional because they're shaking their heads and they're realizing that he's not waking up. And then at the very last, he says, "Oh my God, Jimmy, open your eyes." And I just can imagine that playing out in I'll say kind of MASH units, or we watched a lot of MASH growing up, but in that surgical hospital, or in the recovery of those, and you just hope they can get on the plane and get home and recover, and in this case, his friend didn't, and I don't know, I keep going on and on, but I love this song. I love the fact that I put it on at the end of the playlist, and it just seemed to punctuate the whole playlist for me. And I hope you guys liked it, because I thought it was a way cool. And like you said, John Denver, really? He's doing this? And just amazing.
Yeah, let me say two things. First of all, it works perfectly with A Pair of Brown Eyes, because in the other song, and Jimmy Newman, wait, open your eyes. Pair of brown, it's important. It's important, It's amazing. So, and then also, like you said, great start, great finish, and punctuating it by, yes, a lot of people don't come home from wars. And I think it's kind of a perfect ending to say, yes. Now, maybe if you wanted to say, oh, you can have a protest, but this is what war is. And people don't come home to families, and, their families, and they don't come home. So, and it impacts, as the theme is, with Brothers in Arms. Their buddy has to see it. Their buddy has to endure it. And there's family, like you said, waiting at home for you. They're gonna have to. So I thought it encompassed kind of the whole, the whole of the playlist, and it gives a good shot. So I think he said this, and I think I've said it, Dave. It's a great playlist, and it's a lot of great songs, and we always need to be reminded of a lot of these things. At the same time, it's not one that you want to throw on most of the time. You have to kind of be in that mode. You might be driving somewhere, but you have to be reminded of these things, and what happens in wars. And obviously, we were reminded of it. You don't really need reminding. You can see it every day. But at the same time, all the different aspects that go into it. So yes, our 25th might not be the most listened to playlist on a continuous basis, but I thought overall it was great, with some great songs, and can't wait to continue some more. Any final thoughts from you guys, Mike?
I guess there were several songs that I chose something over the other. And at my last song, up until the very last second, I was going to use this one that deals with the war in Ukraine, which part of me still thinks I should have had that on there because that is front and center in my mind. I've been there, and I know people from there, and who have family that are going through that. And it's a song it was a recording of a Ukrainian soldier singing the song "Rise Up." Maybe I'm getting that wrong, but and the guys from Pink Floyd, two of the members of Pink Floyd, they wrote a song. They they got his permission, and add a guitar and drums and I guess some keyboards to it, and it's a really great song. And I couldn't really fit it in there, but if we ever do a revisit, old playlists, songs we left off, that's probably my pick for that. Otherwise, I love we've said this a number of times. I don't know how many times I've said the word hard describing these songs, but they are difficult, and they're good songs. They're great songs. And I think this is one of our best playlists, which I probably said before, but this one kind of set a higher bar. And no, I won't be out at the lake listening to it, but I will be listening to it,
I think we complement each other really well because we're three old friends, and all that. But I think we're getting into a groove where we just kind of just seem to be picking the cool songs and the right songs in the right order, and turning each other on to some of the different things we're not thinking about, or in some cases, oh, I'm glad they put that one on. I really wanted to put that one on, and they put it on. I think we're doing a lot more of that, and with any playlist, so we always get to thinking, should we do another one? I mean, think about this. We did this, and we didn't even put a Pink Floyd song on. And we talked about how there's like the Final Cut, there's The Wall, there's all these Dogs of War, there's all these war songs, and we didn't even, and all of us love Pink Floyd, and not one of us put one of those on. So like we do a lot of times at the end of the playlist, are there 3 or 4 or 5 songs maybe that you wish you would have put on, or you had on your list? What do you think, Jose or Mike?
Yeah, no, like you said, Pink Floyd was probably the biggest. Tigers Broke Free. I even found different versions of the Tigers Broke Free just to put it on, and then you could, cheat. And like you said, Final Cut, which is one of our favorites, even though people might disparage it, but it's all about war and anti-war and stuff like that. But I think that was probably the main one. I don't think I really had a lot of Bob Dylan songs out there, but obviously Mike, picked Bob Dylan song. But yeah, no, I don't think there was really other than the Floyd.
The only other one I'd add, and it might have fit on there, but you took the Leonard Cohen at the beginning, which is a great song. I don't begrudge you that at all. But he has a song called "The Partisan," which is it's from the perspective. They sing in part of the song in French, and so possibly it relates to occupied France in World War II. But it's that kind of from that perspective, fighting against an invading government, or maybe it's an army, or against maybe the other side in the Spanish Civil War, whatever, the other side of the thing. And I really that's another one I'd like to put on at some point. It's just him and guitar. It's really, and a couple of backing vocalists. That was probably the main one.
There's a couple of songs that I had on my list that didn't fit wherever, but "Good Night Saigon," Billy Joel, is just a really, really good song. Probably one of the most popular. People are probably going to go, why didn't you put that one on, right? Or something like that. But I also thought of "Eve of Destruction," Barry McGuire, "Fortunate Son," CCR, a little more protesty than a war. I even thought of an Iron Maiden song called "The Trooper."
Right. The Trooper, I had that, and I actually found a bluegrass version of it, which I thought would be pretty cool to use. So
then the other thing is, and I actually had this on my list, and I don't know why I didn't do it, so I'm just going to say it at the end, is I don't know how familiar you are with his music. I wasn't a huge fan, but Toby Keith passed away this year, and Toby Keith was all about singing about the red, white, and blue and the American soldier, and he would perform for the troops and was just such a patriotic country singer that we lost this year. And he was only, I think, 62 years old. So, I mean, he wasn't real old. I had a couple of songs that I thought I was going to put on by him, American Soldier, but just didn't get to it. But yeah.
Well, like you said, I'm sure we'll have plenty more chances. Like we always say, we have plenty more playlists in us. I'm sure we never run out of ideas or songs. Can never do that. So, but yeah, there's always one or two misses, but I'm sure we'll gather around again. So, I hope everyone enjoys. Like I said, I hope it's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's part of it, and I hope you enjoy it. And I'm sure we'll be getting back to some happier topics next time. So, thanks everybody.